some lessons don't come from books. They come from bruises. They come from life.
There is no substitute for experience, period.
Some of the biggest successes were a byproduct of failure.
If you want to learn, build, and grow,
Why not learn from somebody who's already paid the price for success?
the wisdom is in the gray.
This is the Graybeard Show.
Graybeard Show. Learn,
Build.
grow.
And welcome to the show. You're listening to the Graybeard Show, hosted by yours truly. My name is Shawn Davis, but in case you didn't get it, in case you didn't know, in case it wasn't clear, just in case you didn't quite hear, I go by Graybeard, and you're along with me as I'm talking about life change. I'm talking about mentorship. I'm talking about coaching. I am a mentor. I am a coach to CEOs and highly charged and successful solopreneurs and entrepreneurs. And today's show is going to be a great one. I call it the CEO trap. The CEO trap. What's the trap? Well, that's when the lion feels caged. So we're going to talk about what to do when you've experienced success in your life, but you feel like sometimes the best days that you've had are behind you instead of ahead of you. Maybe you've gotten to the point where you're no longer inspired. Maybe you've gotten to the point where you've had some setbacks. This show is going to be for you. So strap yourself in, my friends, and get ready. This is going to be a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. So tonight, I want to talk to a very specific kind of person. I want to talk to the builder who woke up one day and realized the thing he built became the thing that boxed him in. The CEO who can move a P&L with a sentence but can't remember the last time he felt truly alive. The solopreneur who fought to get a seat at the table and now wonders why the food tastes like cardboard. If that's you, you're in the right place. That's going to be our subject matter of today's show. And a client told me recently, I don't feel like a failure. I feel caged. I feel contained. And years ago, when he was a spark in every room, 30, 40 million in revenue, a hunter, a creator, he sold, he scaled, he systematized, did all the quote unquote smart things that the books tell you to do. And then came the meetings, the decks, the approvals, the just to be safe. Somewhere along the way, the man who used to draw maps for uncharted territory started asking permission to just move. He didn't lose his edge. He traded it for certainty. That's the trap. That's what we want to avoid. So here's how it sneaks in. First, success can make you feel comfortable. Comfort can then make you cautious. Caution convinces you that predictability is the same as peace, and it's not. Predictability is a padded room. Peace is earned on the frontier where you still feel wind on your face and risk in your chest. See, you built the machine. Now the machine manages you. Am I speaking to anybody out there in Radioland? You didn't sell your soul, my friend. You just leased your instincts to people that want safe and conservative. Let's call it what it is. It is the CEO trap. The world claps for you, but you can't hear it over the sound of your own second guessing. Your team believes you're unstoppable. Your peers think you're still the benchmark. But the mirror knows. The mirror has been telling you at 2:11 a.m. for the last 4 nights that you're outsourcing your courage for safety. How do I know? Because I've lived versions of this. And I coach men and women through it every week. Titans in public, tired in private. The ones who used to feel voltage in their veins now feel a gray hum, like a fluorescent light in an empty office. Let me draw a line on the floor tonight. On one side, the empire, what you built. On the other, the energy that built it. When you confuse those two, captivity wins. When you differentiate them, freedom begins. So let's differentiate. The empire that you built, its numbers, its titles, its reputation, its compliance, it's valuable. It feeds families. It matters. The energy is curiosity. It's courage. It's creation. It's being an artist. It's thinking outside the box. Consequence. It's dangerous. It wakes you up. It makes you feel alive. It makes you feel like you've got a life worth living. See, the trap convinces you that the empire is the point, but the empire was always a byproduct of the energy. Lose the energy, and you'll spend the next decade defending the past instead of designing your future. There's a reason founders get bored. It's not ADD, it's not immaturity, it's biology. Builders are wired to build. Mechanics maintain. Bureaucrats oversee. Advisors advise. You can do all those things for a season, but your soul's economy runs a deficit when you go too long without creating something that could actually fail. That's what you're missing. You're missing that second act. You're missing that opportunity to take your creative juices, all that wisdom, all that experience, all that creative, all of those lessons learned, and marshal it toward a new thing, a riskier thing, a thing that would cause you to become uncomfortable again, a thing that would cause you to use your wisdom and life experiences and good and bad events of your past to then navigate something new. Yes, you could fail. Risk is not a tax on success. It's the toll road to being alive. Risk is the road that success is paved on. Some of you listening feel guilty for wanting that again. You think, I have responsibilities. People depend on me. Good. You know, you're the CEO. That should be the reason. That should be what they're doing. But bring them with you. Leadership is not locking yourself in a glass box so everyone can watch you go still. Leadership is motion, measured, principle, brave, motion, action. Let's talk symptoms of the trap and see if any of these land where you recognize them or have felt them yourself. You're perpetually busy, rarely moved. Your calendar is a museum of obligations, meetings and Zooms and pitches, beautiful frames, but it's all dead art to you. Micro decisions feel heavy. The man who once made $1 million calls by noon now agonizes over whether to greenlight a mid-tier hire. You chase novelty, but not meaning. New initiative, same numbness. You edit yourself in rooms you used to electrify. Safer, smaller, sanitized. Your victories feel like someone else's life. The photo looks right, the feeling is missing. This is how you know that you're closer to being in a cage than you think. This is the trap, the CEO trap, when the lion feels caged because everything is become so blasé, right? Here's the paradox. The trap never tells you. The key is already in your pocket. The bars aren't steel, they're story. It's the story you've been telling yourself about who you have to be to keep it all together. The story that says the tide went out and you got older and it's time to aim smaller and be reasonable. Reasonable doesn't build legends. Reasonable mummifies them. So tonight we're doing something unreasonable. We interrogate the story. You got to ask yourself, honestly, who were you before the metrics made you careful? If you're listening right now and you're somebody that feels like you're somehow less than you used to be, you're somehow a watered down or lighter version of the power, of the intrigue, of the fervent effort that made you who you are, that's who I'm speaking to. I'm a performance coach. I'm a performance mentor. I can help you to get back to who you used to be. But only if you can believe that your best years are still yet ahead of you. I don't care what your age is. As long as you believe that the next 10 years could be the best years of your life. If that's a possibility, if you can imagine that, then that's something that we can work with. That's something I can use to help you. As a coach and a mentor, I help people build themselves back, either for the first time in success, or maybe it's the third or fifth time you're building now. Maybe you need to chase the new thing. Maybe you need to be creative. Maybe you are a creative that now feels a bit caged. If that's you, I can help. Here's what you need to do. If you take out your smartphone right now, you can text Graybeard. Grey. I'm not the guy that does the AY. Greybeard, one word, Graybeard, to 84503. If you're a solopreneur, if you're a business owner, if you're a C-suite executive, if you're a CEO, if you've lost something, if you've lost fire, if you've lost track of who you were, if you don't recognize the person staring you in the face right now, let me say this to you. I can help, but only if you take action, only if you're proactive. You can reach out to me by texting Graybeard to 84503. It's a 5-digit number. Text Graybeard to 84503. My team will be in touch. We'll ask you a few questions, get to know you a little better, and see if we're a good fit. So text Graybeard to 84503, especially if you're somebody out there thinking that the best days are behind you. So here's what you can do. Okay, so here's some answers for you. I'm not telling you to blow your life up. I'm telling you to reclaim authorship, to live on purpose again, to think about how and why you are where you are, but more importantly, how and why you and I are going to get you out of where you are to doing something that you are meant to be doing, which is being a creative, being a hard-charging, go out there, make life happen, blaze a new path kind of person. That's who I am. That's who we need to find you and connect you with again. If you can't move the whole machine yet, start by moving the man who drives it. Because here's the truth that saved my life more than once. You don't need permission to be dangerous again. You need practice. Practice looks like this. 1 hour a day where you build something that doesn't exist yet. Not optimize. Not be safe, but build, be creative. 1 hard conversation a week where you stop posturing and start telling the truth with your partner, your team, yourself. See, a lot of CEOs I deal with feel like they've gotten to a point where they can't share how they're feeling with their staff because their staff looks up to them. They can't share what they're feeling with their peers because their peers thinks they've got everything all put together, that they're doing great, that they're doing awesome. They don't want to divulge that. They can't share it with their spouse or their family because they don't want to put that added pressure on them. And so they sit there and suffer in silence, guessing, trying to figure out what's going on or what changed or how life now is different than it used to be. No applause, no LinkedIn post, just repetition. Groundhog's Day. Aliveness is a muscle, not a mood. Now, I'm going to say something that might make a few of you a little uncomfortable. And if it does, good. It's better than being numb. Security is not your primary stewardship. Your family doesn't need you safe. They need you awake. Your company doesn't need you domesticated. It needs you decisive. Your soul doesn't need you celebrated. It needs you challenged. If this sounds reckless, it's not. Just remember, I'm not advocating chaos. I'm advocating clarity. Chaos is movement without meaning. Clarity is meaning that demands movement. So here's a frame that helps. In Act 1, you learned leverage over the market. You created what you created. You built what you built. In Act 2, you master leverage over yourself. That's where freedom lives. When your inner state is not held hostage by outer conditions. We're going to spend the rest of the show walking that path. I call it the Graybeard reclamation method. 3 phases that pull you out of the trap and put you back into the hunt. Rediscover, rebuild, reignite. And I've distilled these tactics into a companion I'll reference a little bit later, okay, a handout. But before we walk down this path and before we talk about systems, I want to give you permission. Permission to outgrow the version of you the world is comfortable with. Permission to disappoint people who benefit from your being small. Permission to stop auditioning for a role you've already outperformed. Because the lion isn't gone, he's pacing. And we're going to open the gates. So stay with me. Okay, here we go. We're going to jump into it right now. Have you ever noticed that the higher you climb, the quieter it gets? I'm not talking about silence in the room. I'm talking about the silence inside the room, between your ears, where there's no one left who can challenge you without an agenda. Every leader I've ever coached eventually stumbles into this invisible hallway. It's the hallway between admiration and authenticity. Out there, people clap for you. They celebrate you. They think you've got it all together. But in here, inside your head, you're wondering who you really can talk to, who you can really be safe with, who you can really share this. See, that's one of the challenges of being a highly successful entrepreneur. You feel like nobody can relate to you. Nobody can understand. Okay, I can. I've built 3 7-figure revenue producing businesses. I was a financial advisor for 22 years, stepped out of that, walked right into flipping houses. I ended up flipping 12 high-end homes, was quite successful at that, but realized I did not want to do that forever. It was not something I enjoyed, transitioned that into owning an energy company. I own a solar company in California, and I've scaled that up to 7-figure revenue over the last 5 years. And the reality of it is I'm going to try to do that as well with my coaching practice. This may be the 4th time I do it. So in other words, I'm not being braggadocious. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. That's the last thing. I'm a recovering narcissist, by the way. So I never want to do any of those things, being completely vulnerable to you. I've at times felt like everything revolved around me. Okay, I've learned my lessons. It almost cost me everything in learning those lessons. But as a recovering narcissist, I will say I do not want to toot my own horn. I only offer those examples of my prior successes and what I've done as an example of somebody that knows where you're at. I've created other businesses because I got bored. I got tired. I got stagnant. I'm a creative person. I'm an artist at heart. And sometimes when you're building, once you get it built, if it stays built long enough, you get bored. And maybe I'm talking to somebody out there. Maybe you don't have anybody that you can share this kind of stuff with. Well, that could be me. You can have 100 employees, 10,000 followers, and still not a single person you can tell the truth to. Because the truth, when you finally speak it, threatens the illusion everyone depends on. You can't tell you're bored, you'll sound unstable. You can't tell your spouse, you'll sound ungrateful or worried. You can't tell your team they need your confidence to believe in their next paycheck. So what do? You bury it. You master the smile that photographs well. You shake hands like you're still winning. And maybe you are on paper, but inside, deep inside, it feels like you're paying interest on a life that no longer fits you. See, that's the mask you can't take off, right? There's a kind of fatigue that doesn't show up in your vitals. It's the exhaustion of performing stability. You've been the rock for everyone, so long, in fact, that you've forgotten what it's like to lean on anything. When people say, you're so strong, you've been so good, you're so successful, how'd you do it? What they really mean is, I need you to stay strong so I don't have to face my own fears. And that's the trap inside the trap. Your competence becomes their comfort, and your comfort becomes your cage. Every leader I've ever met wears armor of some sort. The problem is we start believing the armor is our skin. You wake up one morning and realize you don't know who you'd be without the title, without the team, without the calendar screaming your value in 15-minute increments. And that's why Sunday nights hit harder now. That's why the early morning wake up where you can't get back to sleep. That's why that's happening. It's not the workload, it's the void. You're staring down another week of meetings where you'll play a role instead of living a life. When the applause fades, but the echo stays. See, you've been applauded for so long that silence feels suspicious. When the room finally stops cheering, you mistake the quiet for failure. I've seen it 100 times. A CEO sells the company and within 6 months starts another one. Not because he has new vision, but because he can't stand the stillness. He thinks he misses the chase. What he really misses is being needed. There's a chemical addiction built into leadership, the dopamine of decision, the adrenaline of crisis, the validation of victory. When those chemicals dry up, most leaders go into withdrawal. But because you're high functioning, you don't call it withdrawal, you call it boredom. And boredom, my friend, is grief wearing a disguise. You're grieving what used to be. You're grieving the version of you who always had an answer. You're grieving certainty. You're grieving the illusion of control that once made you feel immortal. That's the paradox. Until you allow that grief, you can't grow. Denial keeps you impressive. Grief makes you human. And humanity, raw, unfiltered, humbled humanity, is where leadership gets real again. That's what I'm offering. People romanticize the lone wolf. They say he doesn't need anyone. He's self-made. Between me and you, that's nonsense. In the wild, a lone wolf is either sick or banished. Wolves thrive in packs. The same is true for leaders. You're not designed to carry the full emotional weight of vision, payroll, and purpose alone. Yet our culture worships the myth of solitary mastery. We tell kids to, quote unquote, be the best. We tell adults to own the room. And before long, we mistake isolation for excellence. But excellence is never lonely. Excellence collaborates. Excellence confesses. Excellence knows when to drop the facade and ask for help. Let me be straight. There's no prize for dying stoic. The world doesn't hand out medals for your internal bleeding and concerns. So if you're listening right now, maybe driving home after another 12-hour day, the car finally quiet, the dashboard glow reflecting off your face, and you're thinking, nobody actually knows what it feels like to be me. I'm here to tell you, I know. We just don't, as people, as men, as leaders, as women, we just don't talk about it enough. That's the invisible enemy of isolation. You know, that's a challenge. That's a problem. And that's one of the reasons why right now, if you're listening, if I'm speaking any truth to you, if you're hearing anything resonate in your spirit, if you're a high-performing business person of some sort who feels lost in your own skin, who feels like the best days of your life are behind you, let me encourage you. This too can change, and it can change quickly. You can get help. And guess what? Mentorship and coaching, having somebody to talk to, having somebody to bounce ideas off of, having somebody to share something with, having somebody that's not your peer, not in your industry, not in your family, not in your friend group, but somebody that's smart, wise, and knows what you're going through. That can be strategic. That can be a huge advantage. And maybe that's what you need right now. We don't know unless you take action. I've got room in my calendar to take on 5 new mentoring clients. I'm looking for CEOs, solopreneurs, business owners, anybody that's a high-performing, hard-charging, go out and make life happen, but somehow lost some version of that, some faded, translucent version of that. Let me see if I can help you. Text Graybeard to 84503. Text Graybeard to 84503. Take out your smartphone, go to your texting app, key in the number 84503. I am an EY, Graybeard, not an AY. So Greybeard, one word, Graybeard to 84503. I will have my team reach out. We'll ask you some questions. You and I will have a meeting if that's what you desire, and we'll get to know each other, get a little better acquainted, and see if I can't help you believe and realize that the best 10 years of your life could be ahead of you, not behind you. So let's talk about the invisible enemies of isolation, okay? Number 1, the performance virus. The compulsion to appear as a CEO, as a business person, to appear fine. I'm fine. It spreads fast because competence attracts expectations, but the better you perform, the more you're required to pretend. Then there's the success bubble, the echo chamber of people who benefit from your wins. They won't tell you the truth. They'll tell you what keeps the machine running. Then you got number 3, the hero complex, believing you must rescue everyone else before you can rescue yourself. You mistake sacrifice for service, but martyrdom isn't leadership. It's ego wearing empathy's clothes. And then you get to the mirror gap, the distance between who you are privately and who you project publicly. That gap creates tension, and tension creates fatigue. The longer you hold it, the more it bends your spine until confidence becomes chronic pain for you. Some of you are feeling that right now. So here's the breaking of the silence contract. Every executive I've ever met has signed an invisible contract. I will keep it together no matter what. That's what that contract says. It means I got to bear the burden of the world and the weight of the world on my shoulders. I will keep it together no matter what. But guess what? As any business executive will tell you, any CEO will tell you, any lawyer will tell you, contracts can be renegotiated. The first clause you rewrite is the one that forbids honesty. Start small. Tell one person in your circle the truth. Tell your spouse you're not sleeping. Tell your COO that you don't have all the answers. Tell your reflection out loud in the mirror that you're scared. Courage isn't pretending. Courage is confessing while you're still in motion. There's freedom in that because once you tell the truth, the worst case scenario already happened. You admitted you're human. Everything after that is leverage. Number 6, let's talk about the mentorship deficit. Something interesting happens when you reach a certain altitude in business. Mentors become scarce. You can hire advisors, sure. You can join masterminds, boards, or roundtables, but true mentorship, iron sharpens iron, true mentorship, someone invested in you, not your outcome, that's rare. Part of what I do with founders and executives is rebuild that ecosystem. Not therapy, not consulting, but mirroring. I hold up a mirror and say, look, you're still the warrior. You're still that person that built XYZ. You just forgot your own reflection. Let me reintroduce you to it. Let's walk back. What did you do at that time? What was different? What was the environment like? What was your team like? What's changed? Did COVID change things for you? Did it change how your work environment is? See, I coach a guy right now that admitted to me that COVID actually, at this point now, 5 years past, devastated his creativity in his business. You see, when COVID happened, he sent a whole bunch of people home, like everyone did, to work from home. The challenge has been now everyone is still mostly working from home. An office that used to have 65, 75, 85 people in it was vibrant. People were talking, they were fellowshipping, they were synergizing off of each other. It was awesome, he would say. Now 20 people may show up in an office. It feels empty, it feels isolated, it feels like a fraction of what it used to be. So maybe it's that. Maybe you've had a couple of business hiccups. Maybe you've had some challenges that make you lose a little confidence. Maybe you rose all the way to the top of Mount Everest. And then, as life often does, because there's seasons for everything, there's season for prosperity, there's seasons for, let's say, hardship. Every once in a while, you'll get stung. And maybe you've gotten stung more than once over the last 3-4 years. And for some CEOs, this can cause them to lose confidence. It can cause them to feel less than. Like maybe I lost my edge. Maybe I lost something in the process. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you forget. Then there's drift. You can't stay at that level long enough to recognize. Sometimes, that golden goose thing, everything you touch is turning to gold, right? So sometimes that can be a crutch. It can cause disastrous consequences every bit as much as somebody that doesn't believe that they'll ever be successful. You can have challenges of your own creation. Lord knows I have had some. Some of the worst problems I've dealt with in business and in my life were of my own creation. So that's what the life experience is all about. But here's the point. You got to have wisdom. You got to learn from those. You got to dissect it. You got to do an autopsy on what happened. And then you can't lose yourself in the process. Because that's the biggest travesty of all. If you lose yourself. Because, see, it's not that we have to be perfect. In fact, we can't be perfect. I believe imperfect action is always better than perfect inaction. In other words, some people wait to be perfect and they never start anything, never do anything because it's never just quote unquote right. I believe in being messy. I believe in being sloppy. I believe in leading first with action and then letting that action, those failures, those challenges, those problems chart the direction, chart the course. If you're out in the jungle charting a new course for undiscovered lands, every once in a while, you're going to make the wrong turn and end up where you got to backtrack and go and find another way through. It's part of the process. It's part of It's part of entrepreneurship. It's part of success. Failures are part of the success equation. But here's really where the challenge begins. When you start to believe it inside your own two ears, when you start to lose that version of yourself that had all that confidence before. And I do know I'm speaking to somebody out there. I can't be the only one that's felt that. If you're listening and you don't have that mirror, find it. Pay for it if you have to, because isolation costs more than any coaching or mentorship invoice ever will. Number 7, choosing transparency over image. Let's talk image. Somewhere along the way, some people, image hijacked integrity. You started editing your authenticity to fit the optics of leadership. You post wins, filter the losses, call it brand management. Here's the thing, though. Authenticity is brand management. If the brand you're building is trust, authenticity is everything. In today's culture, people can sniff out inauthentic people like nobody's business. Authenticity, being genuine, being who you are. The market's starving for leaders who sound like real people again. Not just slogans, not sound bites, just men and women living their authentic truth, telling the truth with a straight spine and a soft heart. That starts privately, then radiates publicly. When you reclaim truth in your private life, your public influence compounds. Trust operates like gravity, invisible, constant, and impossible to cheat for long. When you hide pain, trust weakens. When you tell the truth, trust thickens. If you want your people to speak honestly, model honesty. If you want creativity, model curiosity. If you want loyalty, model vulnerability. Because nobody follows a mask. They follow a man or a woman who bleeds with them and keeps walking. That's how cultures heal, from the top down. So the opposite of loneliness isn't company, it's connection. Company fills a room. Connection fills your soul. What you're looking for that you haven't found is connection. Connection with somebody that's real. Connection with somebody that's authentic. Connection with somebody that can understand what you're going through. Connection with somebody that might be able to see the problems that you're facing from a completely different angle. Connection with somebody that might think more outside the box in different ways than you. Somebody to bounce ideas off of. Somebody to converse with. Or somebody just to be honest with. You can find it by being known, not admired. Admiration is the applause of strangers. Being known, that's kind of like the embrace of equals. That means you've got to let yourself be seen fully. Here's an exercise I give my clients. Make a list of 5 people in your life who only know the highlight reel of your life. Pick one of them and tell them a truth you've never said out loud before. Watch what happens. 90% of the time, they respond with relief, not judgment. They were waiting for permission to be real too. That authenticity, that vulnerability, it's powerful. It changes people. It changes you more than it changes the other person, because you recognize that you don't have to be the superhero all the time. In fact, you're not the superhero. In fact, you are being tormented by something inside that says, I need to change. Something's off. I need help. And when you're vulnerable, when you listen to that, when you share that, that's where the healing starts. When leaders integrate their truth, not only to their team, but to themselves, everything recalibrates. Decisions get cleaner, communication sharpens, energy returns. You stop using busyness to avoid emotions. You replace I'm fine with here's where I'm at. You measure success by nights you sleep peacefully, not by your quarterly reports or your profit share or where your company stock's at. Integration is not weakness, it's wholeness, and wholeness produces sustainable power. So if you're sitting in that silent corner of leadership right now tonight, as you hear me out there in Radio Land, maybe you're a CEO, maybe you're a founder, maybe you're an executive, maybe you're a builder, and you feel the ache of being alone at the top, hear me clearly now. You're not broken. You're just early to your evolution. Every lion eventually hunts alone for a while, not to escape the pride, but to remember the sound of his own heartbeat, to remember that feeling of the hunt, the chase. That solitude isn't punishment, it's preparation for deeper connection, cleaner conviction, and the kind of leadership that doesn't perform strength, it embodies it. Because when you learn to stand unmasked, you become magnetic. And when you speak from the honest place of your life, when you're vulnerable, when you share, the lonely rooms fill again, not with noise, but with resonance. People going, yes, thank you. So if that's you, if you're listening out in Radio Land right now, if that's you, if you'd like to connect with me, if you think I might be able to help you, then here's all you do. Take out your smartphone, go to your texting app, key in the number 84503, and then just text my name, Graybeard to 84503. Okay? My team will be in touch. We'll set up a Zoom meeting so we can meet, get to know each other a little better, see what's what, see if there's a connection between us. I like to help people that I have some sort of connection, feeling, commonality with. Okay? And I can help you, but only if you're proactive, only if you reach out. I got 5 mentorship / coaching slots available on my calendar. First come, first serve. Okay. If you'd like to explore that, text Graybeard to 84503. One more time, text Graybeard to 84503. And here's why you do it, because you want to reclaim that victory again. You want to be that person again. You don't want to be the caged lion. You want to be free and a version of yourself that is the best version that you've ever created. You want to be the person that believes that the next 10 years of your life are the best 10 years of your life, that they're not behind you, but they're ahead of you. If that's you, text Graybeard to 84503. Talking about the caged creative, you know that low hum that lives beneath everything you've built, that restlessness that never really shuts up? That's the sound of the creative spirit inside you trying to breathe inside the system it once designed. It's being stifled. Every empire begins as art. Every founder, every builder, every CEO worth the title starts out as an artist who happens to use spreadsheets instead of paint. But somewhere along the way, art gives way to administration. The dream becomes a diagram. The movement becomes a meeting, and the wild, irrational spark that built it all gets domesticated by quote unquote best practices. You used to wake up thinking what's possible. Now you're thinking what's permissible. Man, that's the shift that kills more vision than any other competitor ever could. When you first started, so let's do a thought exercise, right? When you first started, did you not feel like everything was alive? That every decision was big and monumental? You were hustling. You were improvising. You were inventing. You were staying up long nights to try to figure out problems. You were the best problem solver. You were the best creative. You saw things that others couldn't see, breaking things to see how they worked. Failure was information. Risk was oxygen, and you absolutely loved it. Tell me you did. I did. I have. I do that now. I love what I'm doing right now. This conversation, this reach out to a vast audience sitting out in Radio Land, driving in their cars or listening at home, listening to me right now. But you see, success sometimes can reward predictability, not possibility. Investors, they want predictability. Partners, they want predictability. And even your own habits start demanding consistency. And consistency for a creative mind, it feels like confinement dressed in compliments. Before you know it, you're curating a museum of your own ideas instead of curating new ones. You've become the caretaker of something that used to be dangerous. It's somewhat like the high school football star that can never stop. Sometimes the words don't come out right. Kind of like the high school football star that can't ever stop talking about his highlight reel, even though he's 35. Okay? That's the tragedy of most great leaders. The same instincts that birthed innovation, creativity, and what your success was built on become liabilities once the system matures. And so the system kills its parent to protect itself. It doesn't happen maliciously. It happens procedurally. You stop experimenting because it costs too much. You stop exploring because it distracts your team. You stop daydreaming because there's no ROI in it. And one morning, you realize your calendar has completely devoured your curiosity. That happened to me. So a little short story here. As I mentioned before, 22-year former fiduciary financial advisor. I dealt with a lot of different investments in the markets that weren't publicly traded. I had to learn about hundreds of different business models. I dealt with investments like equipment leasing, land banking, energy royalties, mineral rights, note programs, vulture funds, private equity deals, non-traded REITs, self-storage, data centers, all kinds of different stuff. I would do due diligence trips 4, 5, 6 times a year to these types of things. I learned a lot in that process. And then I started in radio, and radio was a challenge from one week to the next. How do you get people to call? How do you get people to phone you? How do I market myself? How do I say things differently? Et cetera, et cetera. And then I scaled it and built it. And I got to a point where I was spending $600,000 a year on radio advertising. And then I started to get bored. I had created it. I had built it, but it no longer energized me. It no longer was fun. It became monotonous. It became like Groundhog's Day. I lost the vigor. I lost the fight. I knew something needed to change, but sometimes you get scared in those moments because here's this business. It was a 7-figure business. It was a great business. It took me 22 years to build the damn thing. Here it is. It's a great business. I built it, and here it is. It's paying for our lifestyle, but I loathed it. I couldn't stand it anymore. I didn't want to stay in it. The weight of caring for 400, 500, 600 families, their life savings wasn't something I wanted to continue to bear. All I knew was I was crawling out of my skin. Didn't want to be there any longer. Didn't know what was going to come next, but I knew I had to get out of it. I knew I had to sell. So I ended up selling that business. I found a buyer, ended up selling that business. From the point I decided to sell to the point I was out of it was like 6 months. And it was the biggest blessing of my life because it then freed me up to then imagine what could come next. See, some of you out there in Radio Land have been trapped by careers. You've been trapped by doing the thing, but now you feel uncomfortable by the thing because the thing no longer charges you. It no longer sparks your creative. And I get it. You know in your spirit when the time has come to take a different approach, to do something different, to walk a different path, to be challenged in a different way. Now, when I decided to sell my business, my wife said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I have no idea, not the first clue what I'm going to do. But all I know is I need to get out of doing this. I'm ready for something different. I need challenges. I need new problems. I need new things to think about. I'm tired of this." And maybe that's you. Maybe you felt that same way too. Now, for me, what it did was it allowed me to walk a path where now after, 8, 9 years after selling that business, I've done so many different things. I had an adventure van business. I've done Airbnbs. I've got my real estate license. I flipped houses. I was a performance coach, mentor and coach to business owners and CEOs. And then I started an energy company, and I never knew I could do any of those things. If it wasn't for me taking the risk of getting out of the thing that I'd built, the thing that had created success, the thing that everyone looked and said, look what he's done. That's great. He's done it. He's achieved it. Yet I was dying on the inside. So yes, I know who you are. Yes, I can feel those same things. And maybe this is landing on somebody. Maybe it's resonating with you. Maybe I'm speaking your language. Maybe you're just going, yeah, this guy gets it. He's one of the few that I've heard that gets it. If that's you, just take out your smartphone right now. All you got to do is text Graybeard, Greybeard. I got 5 mentorship coaching slots available. I deal with hard-charging, high-performing folks that feel like maybe they've lost their edge. Maybe that something's shifted, something's changed. They don't exactly know what. They can't speak to anybody. They don't have a resource. They want to connect with somebody that they can share these things with, that they can bounce ideas off of, that can relate. Maybe that's you. Text Graybeard to 84503. I'm selective. I want hard charging, go after it, get it done, no excuses kind of folks. And maybe that's who you are internally. Maybe you need to reconnect to that again because maybe you've become a safer, watered down version of that. But if that's you, I would strongly encourage you to reach out. Text Graybeard to 84503. Now, here's a couple lessons I've learned since making that big shift. Okay? Here's the lessons I've learned. Okay? Number one, you really can't know what you're made of or test your skill set without jumping into the deep water of change, of uncertainty, of risk. For me to leave that business, to jump out of something that was delivering a 7-figure revenue to me and my family, to leave that business, to sell that business, to move on, was a huge risk. What if I fail? What if I can't make that kind of money again? What if I lose that money? What if I make bad decisions? It was all a risk, but it was a risk worth taking because it stretched me. It got me creative again. It got me thinking about different problems. I went into I looked around and saw opportunity everywhere. See, sometimes when you're so busy doing something for 2 decades or 3 decades or 4 decades, it's so hard to see the spark of opportunity in other areas of the world, other areas of the country, other areas of business. Yet your skill set, your knowledge, your experience, your wisdom, your life lessons, they've all brought you to this place where now you have the capability to empower all of that skill set to move potentially in a different direction. That's what I did. Challenging? Yes. Did it make me feel alive again? Absolutely. And I will say I felt like I was floating. When I sold that business and the check cleared, man, you couldn't hold me down. I felt like a 10-foot diameter balloon filled with helium. I was just light as a feather because and then here's some vulnerability for you. Was I a little scared? Was I a little nervous about what was going to be to come? Yes. But that feeling of being scared, that nervousness, that anxiousness, that made me feel alive again. It was better than Groundhog's Day. It was better than being bored to death. It was better than having the same old conversations about diversification and, returns and what's the market going to do? What's the Fed going to do? It was way better. It allowed me to leverage my family more too, to bring them in. In my financial services practice, my kids never saw what I built. They couldn't participate. They were young. They're too young. They didn't have any idea. My wife and I'm married to my high school sweetheart. Okay. We've been together for 31 years. Dated for 5 years before that. So technically 36 years, 4 boys. My oldest is 29. Then I got a 28-year-old. Then I got a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old. So we had 2 kids real quick, got very overwhelmed, back off for 6.5 years, then had 2 more. My kids never got to see me build that financial services business. But by leaving that, by moving on, by doing something different, by having the courage to take the risk to do something different, I brought them along with me. I brought them into the flipping business. I brought them into the energy business. I got a chance to work alongside them, show them how to market, show them how to scale, show them how to build, show them how to think through, show them how to pitch, all those types of things. My sons, they're wired a lot like me and their mom. Hard charging, entrepreneurial, take the world by the horns, kind of young men. And so it gave me an opportunity to bring them into my world and to show them how to build in business. Now, it's not always easy to work with your family, but I will say, I will remark on those years, that time, and still to this day, the moments I have, the opportunities I have to walk alongside them in business, that's been huge. Maybe that's an opportunity for you. Maybe you can create something new that you never imagined before, or maybe you can revisit what you've been doing, but doing it in a completely different way. See, I think at my core, what I love about business, and part of the reason I ended up doing all of these other ventures, is that I like to solve problems. I'm a problem solver by nature. And in business, you need to be that. In entrepreneurship, as a CEO, you definitely need to be that. As a solopreneur, you need to wear every hat in the office. You need to be the payroll person, the marketing person, the employee benefits person, the sales person, the manager person. You need to be all the hats, right? That's a challenge. I've been there. I've done that. It's challenging, okay? But it can also be something that makes you feel electric, makes you feel alive. And for some of you, maybe you're missing that. Maybe somehow that's been lost in the success that you've achieved. You know, some of the coaches, I have a guy I coach right now, and, you know, he remarked to me that part of the benefit that he really sees in this is that he doesn't have anybody else in his life that he can share this kind of stuff with. His friends, not nearly as successful as him, they wouldn't understand his challenges or his problems. They would, oh, yeah, right, you know, Mr. Know-It-All, Mr. Big Bucks. You know, his family doesn't necessarily understand all the intricacies of what he's been through, etc. He's got peers, but he doesn't necessarily want to share it with them because, you know, it's a competitive marketplace. And sometimes divulging that kind of information, I guess in his mind, made him feel less than or weak in some way. But me, I'm not affiliated. I have nothing to do with that business. I have nothing to do with his industry. Yet, in my own right, I've gone through some of the same things that he's going through, so I could relate. We had that connection. And maybe that's you. And so here, as we kind of close out the show, let me offer this. If any of this has sparked something in your spirit, I'll just divulge this, okay? There's 7 key areas of life that I try to focus on. Family, friends, fitness, field, fun, finance, and friendships. So these 7 key areas of life: faith, family, friends, fitness, field, fun, finance. Those 7 key areas, okay? That's how you measure your life success, against those key areas. Not just in business alone, but in those 7 key areas. Okay. And it's important to take stock of where you are. That's one of the first things I do in my process, and to understand where you might be weak right now in your life. But more importantly, to then make plans and have accountability and have a resource that can guide you, that can think through this, that can brainstorm with you, that can problem solve with you. What I would like you to do, if you're interested, if this speaks to you at all, if it resonates in your spirit, if you feel that connection, I do pray before every show. I say, Father God, let them hear you through me. And if it's your will, let them respond. And if that's you, then text Graybeard to 84503. Take out your smartphone, key in the number 84503. I've got 5 coaching spots, 5 mentorship spots, only 5. I'm looking for hard charging executives, CEOs, business people, people that feel like maybe the edge that you had, you can't find it again. Maybe you need a new one. Maybe you want to reinvent yourself. Maybe you want to do something completely different and new. And maybe talking with somebody like myself that's done that several times in my past might be helpful. Well, we won't know unless you're proactive. So here's my pitch. Meet with me. Talk with me. Let's see if there's a spark. Let's see if there's a connection. Let's see if there's an opportunity for us to walk life together through coach and mentorship. And let me see if I can't help you to improve your life. Because here's the one question I'll leave you with. If nothing changes 5 years from now, nothing changes, everything's the same, are you going to be happy with the life you're living? If the answer is no, then you definitely should reach out. Text Graybeard to 84503. Text Graybeard to 84503. And rest assured, my friends, I'm going to be back here same time, same place next week to talk more mentorship and coaching. Graybeard out. This is The Graybeard Show.
The Graybeard Show. Learn.
Build.
Grow.